I didn't hear.
Right
What's that
now.
part? All right. Are we on?
Yep.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of College Pride Press Game Day. As always, I'm your host, Noah Hawley, and today I'm joined alongside by my co-host, Sean Bach, and guest analyst, Ryan Dahlkamp. Today, we're going to be recapping the action from the opening night of conference play and previewing the action-packed weekend ahead. First, let's go around the horn and introduce everybody. We'll start with myself. As always, I am Noah Hawley, a 14-year-old intern for collegepridepress.com. I cover bracketology in the University of Virginia for the site and am the host of this podcast. All right, let's get to you, Sean.
I'm Sean. I'm a senior in high school. I cover college basketball as a whole for College Pride Press and a little bit of Indiana, a little bit of Valparaiso. But, yeah, chief analyst for the College Game Day podcast, and was watching the conference games last night, and hopefully that's a sign of many games to come, great games to come in this season, so I'm excited.
Great games last night for sure. All right, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Dahlkamp. I've been writing for College Pride Press for a little over a year now. I'm a sophomore at Indiana, so I mainly cover them, and I have a weekly hot take article series, which I should be coming out with one either later today or tomorrow. So far, those have been going pretty well, even though my predictions haven't been accurate. But I'm excited to be on the Game Day pod and ready to get into it.
All right, we're excited to have you on here as well. All right, so remember to subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter at CPP Gameday. Also, check out the site and the new article series. We have a previewing conference play for each conference. Pretty cool. I did one for the Pac-12. I think Sean did one for the Big East. All right, let's get into the show. So the first thing we're going to be talking about today is probably the story of last night, and that was Villanova getting pushed to the brink. Indiana actually lost, as I'm sure you guys know very well. Villanova was able to pull it out. They were taking on DePaul. Indiana was playing Nebraska. So we're going to start discussing Indiana's loss. It was 87 to 83. They fell to 10-3 and obviously 0-1 in the Big Ten. The loss snapped a 26-game home winning streak for Indiana. Nebraska showed tremendous poise, never letting the game slip away from its grasp, and eventually knocking off the Hoosiers. All right, let's start with you, Sean. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, the thoughts on all I really have to say is I broke my phone watching this game, as you guys know. I slammed it on my couch and hit a shake weight. I don't know why that was there, but that's kind of how the game went for us Indiana fans and Indiana as a whole. We started out slow, like we've done so many times before, and really we just played to the level of the competition. And I think, honestly, enough is enough with kind of that. It's been a struggle for Indiana teams for years. We played this really easy non-conference schedule with maybe one or two tough games like North Carolina and Kansas and Butler this year. And then we come into conference play, and last year we started out nicely against Nebraska, and this year we just got absolutely outplayed, out-hustled, out-everything. And honestly, all I have to say about this one is I wish the Indiana players came out with as much passion as us fans have for the program, because honestly, it's embarrassing watching these guys perform at the level that they're not capable of and playing to a lower Big Ten tier team like Nebraska. Like, I saw Nebraska play early on in the year, and I really did not think they were good at all. But really, they looked like world beaters against Indiana yesterday. And Indiana's a really tough team to play at home at Assembly Hall. And watching that game was just super frustrating to see how Indiana just let Nebraska control the pace of that game and really just have their way against us at home. So really, I think it's not a good start to conference play. I shouldn't be as worried as I am right now, but you'd think after a loss against Fort Wayne and wins against North Carolina and then a loss to Butler, that this team would wake up a little bit. But really, they just know, like, there's no growth in this team as a team, like as a whole. And it's really frustrating to see them perform like this in the biggest games of the year, especially in games that they should win. So honestly, as an Indiana fan, I really don't know what to say about it. This team is just so unpredictable, but I hope Tom Crean can turn around and maybe get a little more consistency out of his team.
All right, Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think, Sean, you hit the nail on the head with a lot of that stuff. I have a quote from Robert Johnson following this game. As a team, we didn't come out with the right mindset, myself included. I think we thought it was going to be a little easier than it was going to be. I mean, that right there, you can't not get up for the first conference game of the season. You can't take any of these teams lightly. And, I mean, even though Nebraska isn't one of the better opponents they'll see this year, you can't just expect to come out and win. And I think that's partial. I think that's a lot has to do with Crean. Like, if you can't get these guys ready to play every single conference game, then I don't know what you're doing. But it honestly, regarding the game, Indiana looks like a middle school basketball team. I can't say it enough. I mean, some of the mental errors these guys are making. They had close to 20 turnovers, I think. It was just pathetic, and the defense was, I mean, God, there was no defense. So it's just frustrating because every single team that makes runs in the tournament come postseason time, they're up there in the top like 20, 25 of the defensive rankings or whatever. And I just don't see that out of this team. I think they're ranked 59th in the Ken Pom adjusted defense, which is just frightening. And it really is scary. Like Sean said, you don't know what you're going to get out of these guys every night, and it's kind of just a guessing game. And hopefully they can turn it around. They did last year, but two very bad losses early on in the season is not good for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, another thing to add to that is yesterday, I mean, you can play basketball. It's one thing if you're making mental mistakes. And it's one thing if you're missing shots or like not if making shots and like you can always play good defense and you can always like have a right mental mind. And yesterday, seeing Thomas Bryant dribble up the court when I think they were like up by one or down by one, something like that, dribbling up the court and then getting the ball taken away from him, and then Nebraska had an easy layup is just ridiculous and frustrating to watch. And that's a guy who thinks people are saying is a top draft prospect. And it's just crazy to see kind of like the mistakes these guys make. And after a while, you're kind of just like, are you serious? Like, are you crazy? How do you have the right state of mind to make a play, like a boneheaded play like that? It's just ridiculous. And it's almost unwatchable television, just comedy at this point sometimes.
And then you have OG taking like a 40-foot three, which really did not make sense to me at all.
That was like 5 feet behind the NBA point or NBA 3-point line.
That thing was almost half court, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I don't know if it's I just always want to blame Crean for all the stuff they do, because just stuff like that. Like, how can you let these guys do that? Like, some of the substitutions he was making were I just couldn't do it. You're supposed to enjoy watching your teams, and it's just hard for me to enjoy watching them sometimes.
You guys do not sound very optimistic about Indiana right now.
Not at all.
What do you see in the future for this team?
Well, like we said, we don't know what we see. It's night and day with this team. You have no idea what they're going to come out like and how they're going to play. It's unbelievable to watch. Like, I bet they come out against Louisville and look like one of the best teams in the nation, and then they're going to I'm going to get my hopes up, and they're going to disappoint me the rest of the Big Ten conference season. That's just how it goes with this team so far.
Yeah, Sean, we just got to be prepared for the emotional roller coaster that's ahead, because we all know it's coming. It's just frustrating. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they come out and beat Louisville by like 15, which, I mean, I don't think is going to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me because that's just the type of team they are.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that game completely in a little bit. For now, let's move on to Villanova, who was able to pull it out against DePaul. Let's start with you, Sean. I know you probably didn't watch a ton of this game since it was on the same time as the Indiana game, but what were your thoughts from this near loss for the nation's #1 team to
Well,
lowly DePaul?
it's easy to look at the score and like watch the game a little bit and say, how did Villanova play a close game? But with a team like DePaul, but honestly, this is the difference between great teams and good teams. Villanova had their backs against the wall their whole game. They're giving them everything they have because they're the #1 team in the country. And Villanova, they were able to pull this game out. And like I said, this is the difference between a good team and a great team, a team that can close out these close games with teams that they should beat and teams that are pressing them and win these games. And then there's teams that, like we saw in Indiana yesterday, play a lower tier team and they just collapse and loss. This Villanova team, honestly, this is just a wake up call for them. Josh Hart was great, not from the 3-point line, but just overall, he seemed to carry this team. And this Villanova team, definitely depth is going to be an issue for them. They only played 7 guys, and the 2 guys off the bench, Pascal and DaVincio, only played 13 and 16 minutes, and then their starters were in the mid-upper 30s in their minutes. So really just the one thing for Villanova that they got to look out for is how they're able to stay healthy with all these guys playing these amount of minutes and really just controlling their energy. And they have a tough stretch coming up too. I think they play Creighton New Year's Eve,
Creighton.
right? At Creighton, and then they play Butler and Hinkle Fieldhouse, which is arguably the 2 toughest venues to play in the Big East. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond to those two from this DePaul game to those 2 games. So I think how they respond is going to be something to look out for.
I like what you said about this is going to be a wake-up call for Villanova because besides maybe 2 games, they've beaten everybody by like 20 or so points. They're not really used to lower competition giving them a run for their money. So I imagine that they'll be more ready to play the next time they meet such a beatable team like that. All right, let's get to you, Ryan. What were your thoughts in this game?
Yeah, Sean, you were spot on again with the good and great teams. I think that was perfect way to describe it. And I liked how you mentioned Villanova's lack of depth because that was one of the issues I see in them, along with they don't have really a front court presence, so scoring presence down low. And the playing only 7 guys might hurt them in the long run. And although I wasn't able to watch the game, I've watched Nova on several occasions throughout the year, and it looks like they really need a huge performance out of Josh Hart every single night because, I mean, he scored 25 last night?
Yeah.
And they were barely able to squeak out a win at home against DePaul, who has been one of the more miserable power conference teams in the last, 10 years. I definitely agree Villanova's going to wake up. They got great leadership with Hart and Jenkins. I think they'll be fine moving forward. And we'll see how they fare because, like you said, they got a tough stretch coming up. And I expect them to lose at Butler, but we'll talk about that later, I guess.
All right, so we're going to get to some of the games last night that we expected to be talking about today. Let's start with Virginia taking on Louisville. Huge win for my Hoos. They went to Louisville and dominated them for the first 32 minutes. Almost let the game slip away, but were able to get the 61-53 win to improve to 11-1. Louisville fell to 11-2, I believe. So we're going to start with you, Sean. What were your thoughts on Virginia's biggest win of the season?
Well, I don't have much to say about this one as I was watching the Indiana game for a majority of it. But really, all I can really say about this one is looking at the numbers, Louisville absolutely has no shooters at all.
No.
They were 2 of 14 from three, 14%, and then they shot 43% from the field, and then they were 60% from the free throw line. They missed 9 free throws yesterday. And they lose by 8, is my math right? Yeah, 8.
Mm-hmm.
Really just this team they have the length, they have the athletic ability, they have the talent, but they just don't have the one guy that can score when they need to. No one on their team scored more than 10 points yesterday. And you can look at that as balance, but I just look at that as they don't have a guy who can really just put up big numbers and really someone you can lean on to when you need a bucket. But as for Virginia, Tony Bennett showed why he's arguably one of the best coaches in the country. He knows how to scout players or scout teams out, make them play to their weaknesses with that packet in defense, which is exactly what you want to do against a team like Louisville who can't shoot from the perimeter. And this Virginia team is really they kind of struggled a little bit in some games. Ohio State and then the West Virginia game. The West Virginia press was just too much, but
Cal,
really,
too. They didn't play very well in that game either.
yeah, they didn't play well, but honestly, people are talking about North Carolina and Duke. You really got to look out for Virginia in the ACC. I would not be surprised to see them beat either North Carolina or Duke. I don't know if they'll win. I don't know if Virginia will win the whole thing, but I'm not saying they will win the whole thing. But who knows? Honestly, with the emergence of Kyle Guy, great shooter. I really like this kid a lot. I think this team with Parentes running the point guard, he struggled from the field yesterday, but really he's not meant to be a big scorer. He's got to do all the little things. And when he wasn't hitting yesterday, he was dishing out assists and playing good defense and stuff. But really, this Virginia team is just I don't know enough about them to say my prediction about them in the ACC, but they're definitely a team you got to look out for later on in conference play.
Yeah, so I have one thing to say on Louisville. So last night, Virginia used their balanced offense and execution skills, and they somewhat tore up Louisville's defense. And when that happens, with Louisville's offensive woes, they're not going to win basketball games. They really have to bring it defensively. And last night, they did not play very well defensively. They did not respond to, UVA's ball movement and such. All right, so let's get to you, Ryan. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, like Sean said, we weren't watching the game because of the Indiana game, but just looking, correct me if I'm wrong, but regarding Virginia, I don't think they have a score that averages in double figures, and I think that could hurt them in the long run. But every single year they're a top 3 defensive team in the nation. This year, I think they're second right now or first. It's going to always be tough to play Virginia, and when the opponent's offensive game is not on, Virginia's defense looks really good because they just suffocate you. But I just think maybe Prentice maybe having a down year. I haven't really watched Virginia, but looking at his numbers, I don't think he's playing as well as he was expected to this year.
He's not as much having a down year as he's been forced to adjust and become the main scorer for Virginia, and that's just not the type of player he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. For both of those teams, though, like you guys said, it's just tough to find a guy that can just go out and get 20 on a consistent basis like a lot of these teams have. But, both of those teams are very good defensively, but they might rely on their defense more so. Louisville might rely on their defense more to pull out closer games.
Yeah.
But I just really haven't been able to see either of those teams too much. I'll get to see Louisville close up this Saturday. We'll see how that goes, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on Virginia, especially because that ACC is going to be a very interesting race.
Yeah, I liked what you said about, UVA doesn't really have a guy that can go out and score 20. They don't really have a guy that can go out and score 10 necessarily. Yeah. They're just not an explosive offensive team. They go at their own pace and they spread the ball out, and they don't really have any truly talented scorers. All right, so we're going to move on to the final game that we're going to be recapping from last night, and that was UCLA traveling to Oregon and getting knocked off for the first time this season. That was a crazy game. First off, because of the complete lack of defense, and second off, because Dylan Brooks of Oregon's game-winning prayer shot, absolutely insane shot, and then the fans rushing the court because they thought the game had ended, and it had not. They had to wave them back off. It was a very, very crazy sequence of events. All right, we're going to start with you, Ryan. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think first off, I'd like to address, I wrote my hot take article last week on predicting UCLA to have an undefeated regular season, and obviously that didn't come true. But I did mention that this would be their toughest test, and I think people might have been sleeping on Oregon a little bit because of how they struggled in the Maui tournament. But that was with Dylan Brooks that wasn't at 100%. Now he's getting back to that healthy stud that we saw last year, and I think Oregon's a really tough team, and Dylan Brooks showed why he was one of the preseason favorites to win the Wooden Award. But I mean, you just saw two teams with great offenses going at it. A lot of studs in that game, and it was just fun to watch down the stretch how it's kind of back and forth. And we just saw a lot of those guys just proved why they're getting all of that attention, especially Lonzo and Brooks, and I was just impressed with it was just an exciting game to watch in general.
All right, Sean.
Well, yeah, that game was by far, in my opinion, the best game of the season. Just two teams that I don't think the difference was larger than like 7 or 8 points or something like that. Like I think that might have been the largest lead. Mm-hmm. And it was just no team wanted to give up, and that was just an example of conference college basketball right there. But as far as UCLA goes, the guy I like a lot is Thomas Welsh. That was me who tweeted that I would take Thomas Welsh in a mid-range shooting contest from the College Pride Press Twitter, but
he's unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't know how. It's like he's like a Tim Duncan. He just makes every mid-range jumper, and it's just a lost art in the college basketball. But back to that, he's really going to be big for them this year. Him and TJ Leaf, two guys who can score and shoot, bigger guys who can shoot and score and just rebound as a whole for them. But really the difference maker for them is Lonzo Ball. He just makes everything in this team go. He struggled last night a little bit, and then he hit those 3 threes out of nowhere. And it was just that kind of got the light reignited in UCLA, but it wasn't enough come Dylan Brooks' jumper. But really, I think Oregon, much like Ryan said, is going to be a team to watch in the Pac-10 or Pac-12. Really just I like their pieces. I like Peyton Pritchard a lot. He's a freshman point guard, can shoot, do a lot of things for this Oregon team.
He had a huge shot last night.
Yeah, he played really well. Yeah, I think Oregon's definitely a team to look out for, and really the Dylan Brooks being healthy is a big X factor for them because they struggled early on in the year without him. But yeah, I really like this Oregon team, and they're definitely going to be a team I'm going to keep my eye on come conference play.
All right, so we're going to keep the subject pretty much the same with Oregon, and we're going to hop into our previews for this upcoming weekend. We're going to start with USC, unbeaten USC traveling to Oregon on Friday night, tomorrow night, 10 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. Quick bounce-back game for both of these teams. USC coming off a victory over Oregon State in their conference play opener last night, and obviously Oregon coming off that big win over UCLA. Oregon is at home. So let's start with you, Sean. What are your thoughts and predictions for this game?
Well, personally, I haven't seen USC play that much.
Me neither.
Yeah, they haven't played. They're really not on when I'm watching because West Coast. But this will definitely be their first test, big test. Their best win is against Texas A&M on the road in November.
You could also say SMU too. They're playing pretty well.
Yeah, but that was at home, so
That's
I'm
true.
saying Texas A&M. It was away. It was at Texas A&M, and that's a pretty big win. But really, I just especially after the game against or after UCLA, the only way Oregon loses this game is if they have a hangover after that UCLA game. I don't know if that would be the case, but if Oregon plays like they did against UCLA, I don't see why USC beats them or maybe even keeps it close. But really, this will answer a lot of questions about the USC team because not many people are sure, like I said earlier, with their schedule. But this could be a difference maker in the Pac-12 in the early season.
All right, Ryan.
Oh yeah, this game's gonna be interesting because, I'm sure none of us have really watched USC because, like Sean said, they're on the West Coast and they haven't had any national games. They haven't really played anyone, but they're still undefeated, which is pretty impressive. And I like some of their pieces, especially Me Too down low, who's solid, but he's still raw and young. But I really I'm definitely gonna try to watch this game because I think I'm gonna hop on the Oregon train here a little bit. Because I really like Oregon when Dylan Brooks is playing. And like Sean said, Pritchard looked really good last night. But I think a good matchup in this game specifically would be Me Too and Boucher down low. They're both kind of similar players. The raw athletic bigs that down low, so that'll be something to watch. It'll just be – I just want to see how USC responds on the road in a pretty tough environment.
Yeah, I'm going to take Oregon as well. Like you guys said, I don't really know anything about USC, so I can't really go out and say that they're just going to go ahead and beat Oregon on the road. The only reason I can see Oregon losing this game is, like you said, Sean, a hangover or like a letdown game. But I think that Oregon is playing right now like we all thought they would preseason. And whereas while USC has been impressive, they haven't really played an opponent of Oregon's caliber. So this is going to definitely be some adjusting for them. So I'm gonna take Oregon. All right, so we're gonna move on to arguably the biggest game of the weekend ahead, or one of them. It's gonna be number 1 Villanova traveling to Creighton. This colossal New Year's Eve showdown is one of the biggest games of the year to this point. And arguably the biggest game in Creighton program history, or up there for sure. A lot of storylines in this one. The Big East champion could very well come from either Villanova or Creighton. Obviously, they're both top 10 teams, unbeaten. We're going to start with you, Ryan. What are your thoughts and predictions on this game? It's going to be Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, also on Fox Sports 1.
Well, this game you got a matchup of two of the top 7 teams in the offensive KenPom rankings. They both can shoot lights out from 3. So I'd like to think it would be high scoring, but Nova usually can control the game, I think. They're more balanced than Creighton is. But it'll be interesting to see how Creighton responds. Like, they had that big win at home earlier in the year against Wisconsin, but this will be their first true road test against the number 1 team in the nation. And the guards in this matchup are going to be fun to watch. You got Foster and Watson for Creighton and Hart and Brunson for Nova. I think that's going to be really exciting to watch. I'm looking forward to it. But I will take Nova in this game by 6 points.
All right, Sean.
Well, I wrote my Big East article that this was a game that you definitely want to watch as a game during this season. So really, Ryan hit on all that, hit on all the points, but Creighton's they're a great offensive team, and I think it says here that they have the 6th shortest possessions or something like that. Like, they're averaging 13 or 14 seconds of possession. So really, that could be an issue for Villanova. I mean, they are able to control the pace usually, but Villanova is not very deep, and it's really going to test the kind of energy and stamina that this Nova team has. So look for that. Look for Creighton to push the ball, especially as that's what they're best at. But really, I think Creighton's going to take somehow, some way, just win this one. They're playing at home. There's going to be a lot. It's going to be a crazy environment. I don't know. I think they're just going to be home cooking in this one. They're going to shoot the ball great from the field, and I think they'll find a way to win this one and take the lead in the Big East.
I completely agree. That was exactly what I was going to say. I'm really excited to watch. Like you said, Ryan, the two guard tandems, specifically Marcus Foster and Josh Hart. That's going to be a great matchup. They both obviously are very big scorers, very good players. But yeah, like you said, Sean, I think they're going to channel the energy from the home crowd and continue to step up and ride that guard tandem to a victory. This should be a very good game, though. Really looking forward to it. All right, so we're going to move on to the third game that we're going to be previewing, which is Louisville taking on Indiana in Indianapolis. It's going to be 12:30 Eastern time, also on New Year's Eve. What a day that's going to be for college sports, by the way. All right, let's start with you, Sean. Get back to talking about Indiana some. What are your thoughts and predictions on this game?
Well, I talked about it earlier how I think Indiana is going to come out and just play their hearts out, hopefully play their hearts out, and just shoot the ball like crazy against Louisville. But really, I think the X factor in this game is how will Indiana guard? We've seen they've gone to that little 2-3, and they're going to try and pack it in on Louisville because we know they can't shoot. But we saw last year in the North Carolina game, Indiana did that, and North Carolina shot the lights out. So it's really going to be how Indiana sits down and guards and really tries to force Louisville to shoot from the outside. Neutral court game might be a little tough to get used to the rims and get used to the floor and the gym as a whole, but that'll be really something to watch. But for both these teams, it's going to be a big bounce back for sure. I mean, they're coming off losses, that disappointing losses, and really it could be a turning point in their season, confidence builder. It also could be a negative in the year. But as far as Indiana goes, someone that really needs to step up is OG Anunoby. He's came into the year as a top draft prospect, but he hasn't really done too much this year to really boost his stock or anything or get on notice. So he's definitely going to be someone for Indiana who needs to step up, kind of come out of his shell a little bit and be the man as we all thought he would be. But in the end, I think somehow, some way, Indiana's going to pull this one out. They're just going to shoot unbelievable from the three, and they're going to get my hopes up and then bring me down once conference play gets rolling again.
Is this game at Bankers Life Fieldhouse?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Didn't they play there for the Crossroads Classic as well?
Yep.
So
yeah, they always play terrible there too.
Yeah, that was what I was going to get into with my point. Is one, I don't like the games in Indy because, well, when I watch them in Indy, they're 0-4, and just in general, they don't play well there. But yeah, I like what Sean said. I think OG is going to have to step up because I think he might have been given a little too much hype to start the year, and it's starting to show that he's still developing his basketball skills. And yesterday it looked like he was kind of hampered by that ankle injury because it looked like he wasn't getting up as much as he usually does. But I really expect them, Indiana, that is, to come back, bounce back, and like Sean said, shoot the lights out, hopefully, because I think this is a must-win for them with the losses they have so far, even though they have the two great wins. But it's going to be a test for them against Louisville's defense because, Louisville's a top 5 defensive team right now, and I think that could cause Indiana some issues with the point guard struggles they've had. I think, which that leads me to my next point, that I think Josh Newkirk needs to play well and not turn the ball over in this game if Indiana wants to come out on top. But I will roll with the Hoosiers as well in this one, even though I think it could be mentally taxing on me, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I agree with you guys about Indiana. I see them winning this one just because Louisville, as good as their defense is, they don't have the offense to match with Indiana, and I think that Indiana will outshoot them and walk away with this one. All right, so we're going to move on to the next game we're going to be talking about, which is Duke traveling to Virginia Tech for both teams' conference play opener. The main storyline in this one, obviously, is Duke star guard Grayson Allen, who is not playing due to a suspension for tripping. He's probably not going to play for a few games. We haven't really found out how long that suspension will last. But, this game deserves a lot of credit for itself. This is one of the underrated games to watch for me for the weekend ahead. Virginia Tech has the offensive game to hold their own against Duke. So very curious to see what you guys think about this one. Let's start with you, Sean.
Well, I haven't seen. I think I saw Virginia Tech play earlier this year against Ole Miss, I believe. And personally, from those 5 minutes, I got out some good positives. I mean, they can shoot the ball. Besides Zach Leday, they're shooting a pretty high rate as a team, like low 40s, high 30s. But that's pretty good. Shooting three ball wise, I think it's 35th in the country. I mean, that's not bad, but it's still a positive. And against a Duke team like this, you're gonna have to. They're very good on the offensive end, as we know. They won't be without Grayson Allen, but they already have great scorers in Tatum, Kennard, and even Emil Jefferson has played really well. But from the little bit I've seen from Virginia Tech, I could definitely see them keeping this game close. They don't have much height, but that's not really an issue in a game like this. Like I said earlier, the crowd's gonna be crazy. It's the Duke coming to town. There's definitely gonna be a little Grayson Allen banter going on from the student section.
Oh yeah.
But it's gonna be a high energy game, and I think I really like this Virginia Tech team. They're very versatile, can score up and down the lineup, but I think it'll be a good game overall. Definitely one I'm going to watch, but in the end, I think Duke's just going to pull it out. They're just going to be too talented, too much. I think it'll be a close game throughout, like I said, but I think Duke's going to hold on for maybe a 5-point win.
All right, Ryan?
Yeah, I really like this Virginia Tech team a lot, actually, and I think that they're being slept on in the ACC a little bit. I think they're one of the more underrated teams in that conference, and I think they're on the rise. They've had a couple nice road wins at Nebraska and at Michigan, which are pretty solid wins. I really and regarding Duke, the last few games they've been struggling. They've had a couple close calls against some weaker opponents, and I think this is the game where they actually do fall. I think Grayson Allen has kind of caused a distraction for Duke. And I know Coach K probably won't let that affect, but I think that'll play a factor in it a little bit. I just think Virginia Tech's I think they played Louisville or Virginia, one of those two teams at home, pretty tough last year. I expect them, honestly, to win this game, and I would not be surprised to see a big performance from Zach Leday.
I definitely agree with you guys. Virginia Tech can't really match Duke talent-wise, but they can match them in terms of depth. This is a very, very deep team, loaded with scorers and just a very, very talented team. I like this. I like what I've seen from this team on both sides of the ball, and I agree with you, Ryan. I think that this is, I feel like Duke is going to go down here. And I also like what you said about Grayson Allen, causing some of a distraction. In that Elon game, which was when Allen tripped that player, Duke just wasn't really playing that well. They lacked energy, they lacked effort. It was not a very good game for them. I don't really think they're playing very good basketball right now. I mean, obviously they're one of the best teams in the country, and Virginia Tech is going to have to play their absolute best. But I feel as if Virginia Tech is going to ride that brilliant offense of theirs and pull one out here, ride that crowd. All right, so we're going to get to the final game that we're going to be discussing today, which is Virginia hosting Florida State on Saturday. Florida State, very underrated team. They only have one loss as well as Virginia, and they're coming off of um, an opening night conference victory over Wake Forest. Let's start with you, Ryan. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, this is an intriguing game because in terms of Florida State, they got a great tandem in Dwayne Bacon and Jonathan Isaac. It's a pretty good front court, back court combo they got going there. But they're still a very young team. They might have one senior in the starting lineup. But we already talked about Virginia earlier. But I think the discipline and the defense of Virginia is just going to be too much for a young Florida State team, even though it's at home. I just think Florida State's going to struggle with that tough Cavs defense. Although I could see Dwayne Bacon having a good performance. I just think the Virginia is just too solid for Florida State in this one.
All right, Sean.
Well, this Florida State team is the second tallest team in the country in average height, and
they've been that way for years.
Yeah, but this team is definitely one of their best teams in a while. And then Virginia only has Salt, who is 6'11". He's the only starter over or the only player on their team over 6'10". And you see up and down the lineup, Florida State has 7'4", 7'1", and 6'10". That's just absolutely ridiculous. But really, based on the height, if Florida State wants to have a chance in this game, they got to be able to pound the ball inside and take advantage of that height advantage, because really Virginia, like I said, they have no one who can really guard a guy like guard guys that big, especially with the skills of Isaac. But yeah, I think Virginia, Tony Bennett's, like I said, he's one of the best coaches in the country, X's and O's coaches. He's going to find a way to shut down those Florida State bigs, but I really like Virginia in this one. I don't know. I don't know if Florida State can just come into Virginia and get a win. Virginia's a tough place to play, but it'll definitely be one I'll be watching for sure.
Yeah, so whereas Louisville was pretty much identical to Virginia in their style of play, the basics, tough defense, not a ton of offense. Florida State is a polar opposite. They score a ton of points, and they have a solid defense, but obviously not one of Virginia and Louisville's caliber. So I'm curious to see what Virginia does. I also like what you said, Sean. Jonathan Isaac's going to be very tough to guard, especially since, Virginia was expecting to have Austin Nichols to defend a guy like that. Now they have to rely on guys like Jack Salt and Isaiah Wilkins, who are solid players, but, they're not as locked down defensively or as skilled offensively as like a guy like Nichols was. But yeah, I'm going to take Virginia. I see that they, the last time they had a big game at home was against West Virginia, and, that didn't go so well. So that crowd's going to be eager to get another big home win back under their belt, start a new home winning streak. We had a big one that was snapped in that West Virginia game. But, yeah. My pick's going to be Virginia by, let's say, maybe 7 points. I think it could be close early on, then I see Virginia pulling away. All right, but yeah, that's going to be pretty much it. Thanks a ton to you, Ryan, for coming on. It was nice having you. We'll be sure to have you back on here before the season is over. And like I said, be sure to subscribe to us. Be sure to check out the site. Be sure to follow us, all that stuff. We'll be back next week with yet another episode. Really excited for to do this show, as we're in the middle of conference play. We're not in the middle of conference play. We're getting underway with conference play. That's the best time of the year for college basketball fans. To me, I feel like the start of conference play is really the start of college basketball season. the action is so much better. You know, we know a little bit more about the teams, and so on. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it. Thanks for listening, everybody. Signing off for now. I'm your host, Noah Hawley, joined alongside by my co-host, Sean Bach, and guest analyst, Ryan Dahlkamp. Thank you for listening, and we will see you later.